Hello. Hello, hello. Put on my headphones. Because I want to hear some music too. I'll put a little pad on it. Welcome, welcome. We'll get started very shortly. Hello? Let's see here. What if I do this? Oh, it doesn't acknowledge. What if I do this? It does nothing. Okay. I guess I gotta do this. Oops. Oh, that doesn't do anything either. That's unfortunate. Yeah, one of these days I'm gonna learn. Hello, Jeremy Borno. Your topic has been. We're gonna talk about it in. Yeah, I already got that book. See right here. The, so that's cool. I just want some listen to some background music too. I put it on the speakers, but I probably if I put it on the speakers, you'll probably have an echo. So I'm not gonna risk that. Okay, hello, people watching, or maybe you got some people who are gonna be watching the video afterwards. My name is Neil Trotter. This is the Black Ponder, and this is a YouTube channel about philosophy. We do videos about philosophical texts, and we do the live streams. Where we just have philosophical conversations, and that's cool. Trying to up my philosophy game because I've been doing philosophical videos on text for a long time now, several years. But now it's like time to talk to people face to face, person to person, and that's part of philosophy too. You also gotta have dialogues with people. You can't just talk at people. Gotta talk with people. Okay, so yeah, today's topic is going to be what is peace, and it is recommended by a person on the chat, a viewer, and the person's name is Jeremy Borno. And yeah, see, I do that, from time to time. I'll because it's an interactive conversation, and yeah, we can have a discussion with viewers. It's not just a one man show. I do that with some. Viewers will recommend books that I've read and featured on the channel, so why not topics? And and then the other thing I want to say is this is a hangout. It's not like a lecture, so don't. I'm not in front of a blackboard trying to teach concepts. We're just hanging out. We're just chilling. So we're gonna talk about this topic, but we can have side conversations and tangents. That's fine, but usually I'm pretty good at circling it back to the original topic. But yeah, we just chilling, we're just relaxing. And Jeremy says, "Do you think peace is a part of human nature? Or is that what's being said?" Yeah, let me do the copy and paste because I gotta remind people about the let's see, search. The inside base, the chat has this stupid icon. There's a heart. It blocks the words, but I could just go to my word processor, copy paste. Okay. Copy paste, unforward it. Yeah. Do you think peace is a part of human nature? Yeah, I think so. I think people like peace. All right, now I gotta bring my window back. Do I have my phone? Oh yeah, I do, because I got my little notes on my phone. So then the other question would be: so if peace is part of human nature, then is like the opposite of peace? Which is, first of all, what is the opposite of peace? Is it war? Is it violence? Is it like you know uncomfort? Right? What is the opposite of peace? Okay. And then it says, you saying, if I were a celebrity, I would definitely stay reclusive, although I'm semi autistic. Is that? Okay, let's see here. Copy paste. Okay, wait a minute. Unformatted text. It's a damn shame that I have to do this, but I do. Oh, but I'm semi at it. I'm semi autistic. Sorry, this is this heart icon. Yeah, I'm semi at it. Okay, so you'd be reclusive. I would not be. You know, I feel like if I was a celebrity, I'd be one of those people that are just out. But then maybe if I was in that situation, I'd probably be different. Maybe I'd be sick of the fame. I think I'd be like one of those people who are like always on the camera all the time. Who's like that? Like people like celebrities, you just get kind of sick of. You're like, man, that person's. I keep seeing that person. I'd be like one of those people, or like, paparazzi would show up. I wouldn't like run away. I'd be like, hey, what's up? War is the antonym of peace. Okay, I guess that's the dictionary definition. Okay, so let's see here. Let me look at my notes. Yeah, so we can talk about the topic. The topic is, so what is peace? What is it? You know, what is peace? Is peace contentment? Oh, and how does it compare to reclusion? Okay. Yep. Sade is reclusive. Okay, so we're hanging out. So let me show you something about. I like Sade. Now, do you mean Sade the singer, like the band, or do you mean like Desad, the philosopher? I don't know, because I'm into like vinyl, and I have like the Sade collection. It's my mama used to listen to Sade. She was a record player. She's from that generation. I got like all the vinyl. My wife actually bought me this for my birthday. Sade, you know what I'm saying? All the albums, every single one that she came out with, her band came out with. Started. Maybe you're talking about the philosopher side, but the singer side. Look at this. I grew up on this stuff. My mama would listen to this all the time. She gave me the collection. I think there's one missing. Part of that. I think that we got the newer one. Oh well, I mean that's just a side tangent. Yeah, there's one more. I think it's like on the shelf somewhere. It's Soldier of Love, like that, the latest one, which is not really that new. Yeah, there's one more. But Sade's reclusive. There's a lot of artists that are reclusive. Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of Sade. I like Sade very much. So I'll begin the discussion with a talk about this book here, which is actually one of my favorite books ever. It's like, yeah, I really like this book. I don't think I never I read it. I'm like, should I make a video about this? But I didn't think it had enough philosophy in it to like make a video feature it on my channel. I love her, very classy, and yeah, her music is otherworldly. Yeah, it's also just like it's it's just it's not it's nice dance music. It's nice lounge music. It's good for a party, but not like the. It's not like a rave, classy and chill. Yeah, it's like for a chill party. Yeah, that's why I like that music. It's good music. Okay, let's go back. I'm looking at some of these reviewers. Hana Yana Gihara. Here's a quote: "A beautiful meander of a book." Hana Yana Gihara. I'll just look at the quotes. They got a blurb of her. Um, she wrote that book called A Little Life, which is like like so, that is known for being like super 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 depressing. I've never read it, but I know it was like super hyped. But she liked that book. That's funny. So, in A Lonely City, Adventures in the Art of Being Alone, it is about loneliness in like big cities, like big metropolitan cities like New York, just San Francisco, Dallas, Texas. I forget, there are lots of cities profiled, Detroit. And the author focuses on a bunch of celebrities. Like one of them was cool was Andy Warhol. I think they also um, talked about who was the lover of Just Kids. I don't have that. The yeah, I forgot his name. Um, Patti Smith, Just Kids, and then she had a lover who's like a famous photographer. Took a lot of erotic photographers. The book focuses on his story as well. It's also all types of famous people and not so famous people. Vivian Mayer, I think her name is. She was like a famous photographer who like got just under discovered recently in a recent decade or so, and this person like really brought like a higher popularity to like street photography. uh, just a bunch of people, and then they're just showing how these people who were in these big cities and who reached this huge amount of success, they are very lonely people. Even though they were like surrounded by people and like they were in really crowded environments and they had jobs where people were like all around them, their personal space wasn't like they barely had any personal space, yet they were still very lonely, right? Even like the work like that they did, like photography or art or music, and they like it didn't allow them to have like alone time, right? They were always with people, yet they were still like very lonely, right? So that's interesting when you think of it like that. Andy Warhol, like he was a very lonely person. So first of all, there's like a difference between loneliness and being alone, right? Two different things, right? But then we talk about in the context of peace, right? Because peace is, you can imagine like, oh, peace is about like, not being around a lot of people. Like, being around a lot of people can be a hectic environment. You can, lots of noise, lots of dialogue. Being lonely, being alone, right? You can get some peace, right? You would think so, but being alone or loneliness, that's not necessarily a state of peace, right? Some people like they get a state of peace by being like around lots of people. Like I guess they call those people extroverts. So that's very interesting right there. Let me look at some chats here. Wide-eyed smiles. First time catching your live. I love your channel. Okay, great. Thanks for tuning in. On topic, I found a lot of peace from studying Taoism and Buddhism. Okay, cool. Yeah. Those are some great philosophies if you just take them offline, or religions. Yeah, we could talk about that. Yeah, let me. Well, yeah. I'll just talk a little bit about that for a minute. Like Taoism is all about finding balance, right? Taoism acknowledges there's like this duality in life. There's a duality in like everything, right? Whether it's good and evil, or black and white, or darkness, lightness, or whatever. It's all types of hot, cold. Everything's a duality, but the key to finding peace is to find that balance, the in between. Like acknowledging that there's the duality exists, but like recognizing like no nothing really is either one way or the other. Like everything exists in the in between, right? And so that realization is how you get toward being getting a state of peace, right? Because now we live in a world where we live in this world of binaries, where it's like you're either this or you're that. But Taoism is like, no, you're neither, or sometimes you're both, or you're in between, right? And this is how we get to a state of peace, like that balance, right? So that's cool. And then Buddhism is kind of even talks further. It's like, well, that you can't really obtain a state of peace unless you reach enlightenment, right? So I mean, yeah, life is suffering, right? It's like one of the noble truths. So like, true peace is you like striving toward that moment of enlightenment, right? So there you go. That's interesting. Then we got Imon plot. Sorry. Is that an I? It's so small I can't read it. Imon plot. Oh. Is it acceptable to separate between two kinds of peace? I say peace for the individual is different than society-wide peace. Is it? I don't know. I don't know about that. I think a peaceful society offers peace for individuals too. Like, yeah, I'm trying to think about that. Like, if you have a society that is not peaceful, can you have individuals that are in peace? I don't know. I don't think so. Or, the other way around. If you have individuals who are not who aren't in peace, then is it possible to have a peaceful society? I don't think so. I don't think so, but I don't know. And then wide eyes, sense of ostracization within the crowd. Neat. Yeah, it's like kind of like alienation. Kind of like like the Catcher in the Rye, which is like that was the theme of that book. Where it's like nobody understands me. I'm surrounded by the phonies, right? So yeah, kind of like you don't feel like you belong with all this everything that's going on. Yeah, so there's no peace there. And then Jeremy Barno responds to Immo Plut. What is a societal peace compared to individual peace? Yeah, I like to know that. Ask that question too. Wide-eyed smiles. I feel like there has to be more kinds of peace than one, because you have contentment as a part of peace, but also the freeing sense of detachment and unattachment. Is there multiple, or is there one kind of peace? Or maybe like, is peace different for each individual? I tend to think not. I tend to think maybe like for some people's version of peace is different, but the state or the mode is the same. Meaning like the way to get to peace is the same. Like maybe people's idea or conception of peace is different, but like the what is it? The circumstances or like the situations? What is it? Like the environment to get toward peace is the same for everybody, or the conditions. The conditions. That's what. The conditions to get to the state that is peace, I would argue, are the same. Now, when you get to peace, like the peace in and of itself, like the what. So peace is not what you're doing. Peace is like the getting to it, right? So it's the conditions. I would argue, and I think that would be the same for all. But we could get into that more. Where was I here? Kind of like the peaceful flow state within moving around a crowd is different than the relaxed detachment of moving as part of the crowd. Is it? Is it different? I mean, you're doing different things, but the flow state is the flow state. You're doing something different, but you've reached the flow state. Yeah, that's a common thing. That's true. Like because I do marathon running, and with marathon running, it's like one of the goals is to reach a flow state where like you're in this long ass run and you're tired, but you could get your mind and your body like into this zone and like where you're not like worried anymore about like how tired you are or how long it is. You're just kind of like in this zone. You're in this flow state. But that the flow state could be achieved, you know, in many contexts, right? Studying, right? Studying for like some academic, like doing math problems. You could have reached a flow state doing that. Playing games, you could reach a flow state with that. So I guess that would be my thing. Like the flow state is kind of the conditions are the same for everybody, but like what you're doing may be different. I don't know. Let's see. Is peace being at a state of contentment with the environment, movement? I guess that could be peace. Is peace contentment? Not necessarily. What then is peace like happiness? Because happiness and contentment, are they the same? They could be. I think they're kind of different though, but I think they are synonyms. Right. Well, let me go through some more chats. Accept the world exactly as it is. Well, is that like? Well, I mean, because accepting the world as it is can also be like a nihilism or nihilism, which is that peace, where it's like, oh well, I don't care anymore. Like there's no meaning in anything. Who cares, right? And then so when you reach that mode, like, are you in a state of peace? I don't know. I would say you're not. I would say maybe you're kind of like in denial, and maybe you're trying to psych yourself. You're trying to pretend you're in peace, but you're maybe I don't think you are. Well, I don't know. Let's see. And then Jeremy Borno says, I don't like talking to strangers. It feels like I have to put on a show to interest them. I'm introverted, so being around others and talking to multiple people disturbs me. Okay, yeah. That's fair. So when you talk to strangers, you're not in a state of peace. Right? Done at Whereas other people, like I have friends who are like extroverts. Like I have friends who like when the pandemic hit and they couldn't go out, but they were just having these mental breakdowns. Like literally, like the cabin fever was like they were having, I mean, basically mental breakdowns. They were. I know people that they just had to go out. They had to talk to people. Like, I do know people like that who just like they have to just talk to people. I have family members like that too, who are like constantly going to like clubs and parties. They have that's I guess that's the extrovert, right? They get their energy from interacting with like people, particularly like people they don't know, strangers and stuff. And like they love getting to know new people. That like invigorates them. So it's got which is the opposite of an introvert. So there you go. That's like two modes of peace, I guess. Right. But then is that even peace? The gaining of energy, the invigoration, is being invigorated peace? I don't know. And then Wild Eyes Smile says, "Isn't that the study of Buddhism to avoid unnecessary suffering and find more peace in a suffering, violent world?" Yeah, I mean, I'm not a Buddhist, so I mean, I've studied Buddhism, but I'm not a Buddhist. So I mean, I would take what I say with a grain of salt. uh, but I think like the goal of Buddhism is to like transcend like life or like the state of existence as it is currently, to avoid unnecessary suffering. It's not even to, from my understanding, you're not even trying to avoid. You're trying to basically just transcend, or like you. So you're not avoiding. You're acknowledging that the suffering in life. You're like, that's like a huge step in Buddhism. Is like, okay, life is suffering, like, and it's so there's no avoidance. It's just like you accept that life is suffering, and then like you kind of acknowledge like, well, this suffering is not like the ultimate reality, right? Is you need to transcend that, that kind of like that spiritual realization, like breaking free from that, like the suffering that is life. So it's kind of like it's a breaking free from like the suffering of life through like a spiritual like enlightenment, or like, so it's a lot of like education and a lot of like spiritual like examination of things through meditation and such. So are you trying to find more peace in a suffering violent world? I that's not my understanding of Buddhism. They're not trying to find peace in a violent world. They're trying to transcend the violent world. They acknowledge like, oh, this violent world, you can't have peace. Like you have to break free from that. Like, that's my understanding. I don't know. I could be wrong. Let's see. Jeremy Barton. There's peace being alienated. Okay. You don't have to care about people's opinions. Yeah, maybe something you want to be alienated, but who is that like a thing? Are there people? Well, first of all, are the people? Is that even a thing? Like, do people not care about opinion? Like, we always thought that around. Like, you can't, gotta stop caring about people's opinions, right? But you know, ultimately, we do care about people's opinions. Maybe there are some people who are like, I don't give a shit. But then like you even like there's people who are like, well, I don't care about what most people, but they do care about like the opinions of people who love them. Right? They might care about the opinions of their friends and their loved ones, right? I don't know if I'm not sure if that's even possible to be like, I don't care what people think. It's like, I don't know if that's a possibility. I think, but you can't get to a point where it's like you don't care about what most people think, or you don't care about like unimportant aspects, like like putting a selfie up and putting all the filters and all that. Like, you don't care about that stuff anymore. I think you can get to that point, but then you're still probably gonna have like inner thoughts about like your appearance, even that's always a constant struggle. So I don't know if that's even achievable. I would say maybe it exists in degrees. Okay, yeah. Oh, and then we have a user who is a cross symbol. Hello, or it's Ankh. Okay. How would you exactly define peace? Contentment? Yeah, that's what we're trying to do now. How would you define peace? Is it just contentment? Is it like, I'm okay with this? Is that what peace is? Or is it something else? How many comments I got left? Because I wanted to throw something in here. Well, let me get through some of these comments and then because I don't want to fall behind. I'll throw in some more points. There's no versions of peace, Jeremy says. Otherwise, violence would be considered peaceful, which is ridiculous. There's no versions of peace. Okay. There's only one kind of peace. There are no different versions. There's only one version. Is this true? Wide Eye said the functions that de-stress the mind are ubiquitous. Peace is the destination. Peace is not the journey, it's the destination. Is that true? Yeah, I don't know if that's true. I'll never forget. One time I saw an interview of this guy, this actor. He was like, I forgot, like yeah. The actor was like, I don't know if you ever seen Seinfeld before, but it's the guy with the short guy, bald-headed guy with glasses. I forgot his name, the character's name. But he's been in all types of stuff, and he was just talking about how he achieved like everything he wanted. Like he got like the Tony Award, he got the Emmy Award, he got all that, the accolades, and then he got all that, and he still wasn't happy. He was like, and he was confused. He's like, "What the hell? I don't understand. Like, I got all this stuff, I achieved all the goals that I set out to achieve, but I'm still not happy." Right. So he arrived at the destination that he set out for himself, but he still wasn't at peace. So is it the journey? Or maybe the destination was wrong. Maybe he's like, the target that he wanted was not what gave him peace. I don't know. So I hear things like that where people are like, I achieved the thing that I wanted, but I'm still not at a state of peace. It's like, well, is it about the destination, or is it more so about the journey? I'm more inclined to think that's the thing. And then Desh Ihad says something in Arabic. I can't read that. But thanks for being here. I feel it's different. Wide-eyed says, I feel it's different in a Lucanian sense, like both flow, but a cooler engagement. Yeah, I'm not really following that. If you would like to elaborate, that's fine. But if you don't want to elaborate, that's cool too. Lucan, yeah, no, I'm not really too familiar with that person. And then Benji says, "Oh, somebody studied flow states." Okay, hello Benji. Is peace? And then the Ankh says, "Is peace subjective, pertaining to each individual?" Oh man, it's just so many comments, which is great. Okay, let me just stop here for a minute, and then I'll continue the comment section later, because I would like to add a few things, a few points. Um, yeah. So one thing I want to talk about is, I I have a lot. I have a lot of friends who are like into horror, the horror genre. They really like horror. Like I have some friends who are like hardcore into that genre of media. Horror is fun. Well, how do I feel about horror? It's all. It's fine. I'm not a person that says I hate horror, but I'm also like not like super hardcore into it. And some of those horror movies is just like, okay, this is just too much. but I have some friends who are like really into like the body horror or like even like that, the even more extreme shit, and it's like, damn. And they really like they watch that stuff. Uh, like I remember I probably could have finished it, but I was like, yeah, I don't feel like watching this shit. There was the philosopher, I think, is Desaad, the Marquis de Sade. He wrote a book. It's a philosophical text. It's called 120 Days of Sodom. And de Sade is like, it's not everybody's cup of tea. He's a philosopher, but he's really into like the philosophy of sexuality and like the philosophy of boundaries and the philosophy of like like extreme the philosophy of the extreme. He's really into that, and some people think he's like not really worth studying, but some people really are into him. Decide and yeah, that and so he writes a lot of these like porn, like they're basically extreme porn, but like also like very violent. If you ever, I mean, you might have heard of this guy. I mean, he's not like too unpopular. One of the old school philosophers, and they made a movie, which you may have heard of this movie, 120 Days of Sodom. It's just like, it's like a torture fest, but it's like, not just normal torture. It's just like really sick, like over the top, like kind of like, I wouldn't recommend watching this movie to like the average person. Like, I wouldn't recommend this movie to anybody because you may know about it. I was like, I can't watch this. I can't finish this. Now, some people are really into that type of stuff, though. And, some of my friends, they watch it like, yeah, I'm into this, man. I feel at peace when I watch this. And, that's the type of stuff I'm talking about is like, yeah, it's like, man, are you at peace? Some people are into certain things. It's not just like, you could talk about like BDSM and that type of stuff, but also you could talk about other things. Like I do the marathon running, and a lot of people think that's just nuts. They're like, why would you do that? Why would you run those long distances? Like you're punishing your body, or even like ultra marathons when you run like longer than 26.2 miles. I've run a ultra marathon that was 50 miles, and I found I was at peace often when I read. There were times when I was running into that ultra marathon when I was at peace, but that's not everybody's cup of tea. Some people would find that like incredibly uncomfortable. uh, so it's just interesting, like what people are into are the things that give people a sense of peace. Whether it's like horror or like ultra marathon running or like kinds of like athletics that are like most people aren't into. I know, I remember like, and it's all types of things. It's like I studied computer science in college, and a lot of the people I studied with, they were like vampires. They were they would like you go into these computer labs or these like study rooms, and you turn on a light and they'd be like, hey, turn the light back off. Right, you have to turn the light back off, and they'd be staring at their computers, just programming for hours and hours, just staring at their computer screen. Now I've talked to other people there was like, yeah, there's no way in hell I could like stare at computer code on a screen for like hours on end. That would just be like torture to me. Right, but then the computer programmers, they're like, that's like heaven to them. That's like this is amazing. I want to do this all the time. I enjoy this very much. So yeah, it is interesting when you think about it in that way. Like, well, peace. Yeah, some people get peace in different ways, or different modes, or like, um, yeah, people. Yeah, you know, some people are animal people. My doggy just sat next to. Let me see if I could angle it. He's just asleep there. But you know, some people get their animal lovers, and they're like, I get peace from it. And then there's some people who just, they're like, I hate animals. like they're not like animal people. I do not want to have pets. There's people like that. And then when they get a cat, or my grandma, for instance, she hated cats. I don't know why, but she just despised cats. Like stray cats would come in the backyard. She would be like that old lady. I'd be like, shoo, shoo, with the broom and shit. She just like cats for her. Is like was not. Cats are cool with me, but she just hated the cats for some reason. So, same thing with children, right? Some people just don't like children. I know people are like, yeah, I would never have. I know women who are like, there's no way in hell I'm having a kid because I hate babies. So, for them, like having a baby would be very unpeaceful. but, but some people love babies. So it's interesting. So, we can talk further about that if you want. How the different ways people get peace are like, what does peace mean for different people, I guess? Yeah. Or like, is there like a similar theme, underlying component to like these various things? Right? And is that underlying similarity, is that what peace really is? I just, because the Ankh, he was saying here, peace is subjective pertaining to each individual. That's kind of true. But is there like I guess my question would be like, maybe there's this underlying similarity between all these things, and that's what peace is. And then Shihad, do you study religions? Yeah, I do. I have a whole playlist. I have several videos on this channel about like philosophy of religion, where I go into talk about Buddhism, Taoism, Christianity, Islam, what other Taoism. I think I might have said that one already. Yeah, I think those are the. I might have. Oh, Hinduism. Yeah, I have several videos on Hinduism as well. So I enjoy studying religions. Yep, and it also helps that I have a lot of friends who are of various faiths. Like I have Hindu friends and Buddhist friends. I even have a Taoist friend, that's pretty cool. Of course, I got a lot of Christian friends. Yeah. So not only because sometimes you read it is like, well, let me talk to like people who actually practice a religion. So that's very helpful too. And then Jeremy Borno says, I think peace and contentment are different. Yeah, I think so. Like when you enter that flow state, are you in contentment? Or like when somebody's watching an extreme horror movie, are they in content? No, but they're really like enjoying themselves. So they're kind of at peace. Or maybe they're not at peace. But are they? Maybe they are. I don't know. Is that what peace is? I don't know. Imon Plut. I was I was thinking an individual peace is coming to terms with the circumstances of one's life, and a societal peace is utopia. All right. But then, like, what is utopia, right? A societal peace is a utopia. Well, first of all, like, what is utopia? Because that could be different for. See, that's the problem with like utopian concepts is like because one version of utopia is different from somebody else's version of utopia, right? Uh, right. So I mean that's the other thing to consider, and then coming to terms with the circumstances of one's life. Yeah, it could be. I don't know if that's even like a piece because sometimes like the circumstances of one's life are so bad that you just is unable to achieve a contentment or peace. Like I think there's situations where some the circumstances of one life are so extreme, like they're unable to come to terms with that, right? So sometimes you have to it's required for you to overcome or like the circumstances must change for peace to be even a possibility for an individual. I would argue. So I know probably some people would differ in their opinion. Like, well, you can come to you can achieve you can accept any term. It just is your mind is. But I don't know if that's true. I don't know if the human mind is like capable of accepting any circumstance. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. And then keep thinking of the Dokodo. Okay, I don't know what Dokodo is. But okay, wide eye smiles. Jeremy Borno, peace is calming chaos inside of you. Oh. Do you think reclusion coexists with peace? Well, if you like to be a recluse, some people enjoy reclusion. Um, some people hate reclusion. So, do you think reclusion coexists with peace? Well, I mean, I guess if you find reclusion peaceful, I think it probably is peace. But if you do not like being reclusive, then it would not coexist with peace, I would argue. And then the Onk says, is a utopia truly peaceful? And so, yeah, that's the question. Uh, I was about to say, like, because the problem is, like, because everybody has a different, like, different people might have a different idea of what utopia is. So, like, the problem is, like, so there is no such thing as utopia. But that's not true. Maybe utopia is an existence where everybody can have their version of what utopia is. So what's that really? That's like freedom, right? That's like ultimate freedom to do, you know, to realize your utopian vision. But maybe that's not even it. Because now I'm starting to think like, afterlife and heaven, and like, so what does that look like? Because that's heaven is like, the Christian version of heaven, and that's a utopia, right? But what does that look like? I don't, that's the question that is beyond me, probably. Okay, and Jeremy Borno says, nature is peaceful despite wild animals and toxic plants. Is nature peaceful? I don't know about that. Some there is many aspects of nature that is peaceful, but there are also many aspects of nature that are not peaceful at all. Like, lots of nature is like very violent, right? Even like when you're talking about like, just objects like non-living things, like a supernova. That's not peaceful, right? Right. I don't think it is. Like, well, I guess some people say like, well, that's kind of because it's a natural. That's a violent explosion, right? A black hole, is that peaceful? Probably not. Like what is it called? A quasar, like those super dense, a giant star goes supernova, but it's so giant the gravity like forces it into the super dense material, and then that dense material, creates like it's so dense, like the matter around it spins at such high velocities that it like shoots out, shoots out like huge, you know, heat, light waves and shit, right? At like these like almost unimaginable velocities and like energy levels. That's what a quasar is, right? That's a very violent and unpeaceful event, right? And we can go on, like a volcano eruption. That's not peaceful, or a meteor hitting a body, a planet, which that's not uncommon in the universe. That's not peaceful. Despite wild animals, us humans are capable of living well with it. Oh yeah, yeah, we are capable of living well in nature, for sure. That's true. We are capable of doing that. But as we all know, like humans often fail to live peacefully with nature. That's true. And then red eyes, really. Peace equals absence of external and internal conflict. Ooh. Societal peace can only help to provide favorable external conditions, allowing the individual to spend more time focusing inward. But I guess my question is, don't you need conflict to to develop, right? Like, don't you need some sort of conflict to develop? Right? I mean, yeah. I mean, for example, if you work out at the gym, you gotta like lift heavy weights. That's a conflict. You kind of forcing your applying energy to lift heavy objects. That's a conflict that you're opposing. You're going against, and by doing that you develop your muscle mass, right? It's such and such. When you like go to school and you learn, right, and you're solving problems. Problems are like little conflicts that you have to like overcome, right? No. So if there's no conflict, yeah, I'm not sure if that's equals peace. But then the question is like, but maybe that is the case. Like, so then the question is like, is a fulfilling life all peaceful, or is it like, well, no, the parts of peace does involve conflict. Yeah, I don't know. And then the Onk says, if you were an animal, would you still consider nature peaceful? Well, first, human beings are animals, right? We're Homo sapiens. Right? That's our animal description. So, yeah, and that's an important thing, to consider. That is important to consider, because we often like separate ourselves from other animals. Like, well, we're not animals. We're like human beings, which are different. It's like, no, actually, we are animals, right? Right. So you still consider nature peaceful? I mean, do other animals consider nature peaceful? I think other animals probably also deal with um, unpeaceful events within nature, right? It could be like a winter storm or something like that, heavy rain, or like a drought or something like that, wildfire, um, yeah, destroys their environment. All types of unpeaceful events. But then they probably also encounter nice things in nature too. So I don't think so. I think they would probably not consider all of nature peaceful at all times, right? Cyborg 2.0 says, "Greeting. What's going on?" Oh, we're talking about the definition of peace. How long has this been on? It's been on for an hour, about. And Jeremy Borno says, I probably would not if I were an animal, but we humans are conscious of the stillness of nature. Yep, yep. Again, like we are animals, and I think also probably there are some animals who are also conscious of the stillness of nature. Right. I think that's probably true. Maybe a bird might understand stillness of nature. I think there are animals who are more aware. Sometimes we kind of we underestimate other animals' ability to think. and or that we underestimate other animals' consciousness. I was actually just reading a scientific article that was talking about how fruit flies, they have like a little toy merry-go-round, and the fruit flies will land on the merry-go-round and ride it, and then they'll fly away. And then when they start the merry-go-round again, they'll go on the merry-go-round and ride it, the little toy merry-go-round. So it appears like the scientific research article was saying maybe the fruit flies they enjoy that, right? It makes them happy. As a lot of people would assume oh, fruit flies are too stupid to understand that kind of thing, or to indulge in that kind of enjoyment. So I don't know. I think many animals are conscious of the stillness of nature. What breed of dog is that? That's a Rottweiler mixed with a pit bull. Aren't natural disasters supposedly rare? Uh, uh, I don't think so. You mean like earthquakes and stuff? I mean, earthquakes happen all the time in different parts of the world. Interestingly, it's because most of planet Earth is ocean, so most earthquakes happen underwater, right? Um, what else? Yeah, no, I think natural disasters happen fairly often, but they're happening more. I guess they're not natural, right? Because they're influenced by the climate change that we human beings have caused. So they wouldn't be natural, right? Like hurricanes and um, droughts and shit, and extreme weather is happening. So it's happening more frequently. Unfortunately, it's becoming less rare. Sadly. Is peace just a judgment on a specific state of contentment? Wild-eyed smile. I think it's actually is not. It's not just a judgment. It is kind of like a state of being, happiness or sadness, or anger, or different kinds of emotions. They aren't just. They're not judgments. They're states of being. Right. So I think peace is not a judgment. It is a state of being, a mode of existing. I would say. So I guess it would be different from contentment, I would say. When I think of peace, I think someone living in nature to reflect himself or herself. Okay. So when somebody is on the dance floor, when you go to a rave, I used to go to a lot of raves, and then you would see these people with the glow sticks, and they would be kind of moving to the music with the glow sticks. Their eyes would be closed. They'd be they would be in this complete state of bliss, basically. I would think they'd be in peace. I would say they're in peace at this point of living in nature. I guess they are kind of sort of living in nature, or they're living on the dance floor with a big ass speaker in front of them and a light show, DJ playing that house music. I would say they're in peace. Right. Sometimes I go to these. I go out a lot too. I'm one of those. I guess I'm like they say I'm an ambivert, which is like a mix between an introvert and an extrovert. Ambivert. I go out a lot. They have these things where I'm from, where I'm living now. They're called goth nights. They're just parties where they play like a lot of like dark music. That's how I know a lot of friends who are into horror, and they'll play like this music that's like kind of goth oriented. And you'll see these people, and they're not like some of them are dance. They have dance partners, but some of them are just dancing like by themselves, and they're dancing like they're zombies and shit. It's very interesting. They're like kind of like moving as if they're possessed and shit, which is cool. Like, hey, I'm more power to you. I'm like one of those guys that kind of vibes in the background. Like, yeah, it's kind of cool. I'm like a background viber. I guess. I'll dance sometimes, but I kind of like hanging back and just kind of absorbing the vibes. But some of these people, they dance. It's like, wow, you like possessed by some demon or something. The way that, but they're enjoying themselves. They're kind of like going with the flow of the music, and they're really just like vibing with the way that a goth person would vibe. And I would say like, yeah, they're at peace at this moment. They're at peace, right? But they're not like at Yosemite National Park or like or like in front of like the giant redwood trees, right? Or like they're not in the Grand Canyon or something, like appreciating like real outdoorsy nature. You don't have to do that to be at peace. I would say. Okay, there. Okay, is peace? Okay, when societal peace sounds like law and order. Too much to me to be true peace. Yeah, I mean it depends on what you think. Yeah, some people are like, law and order, like more cops, militarize the cops, send in the natural guard, the National Guard, martial law. That's how we get peace. But I would say like, well, we should live in a society, where like, how do you have societal peace? Well, let's like make healthcare free. Let's make higher education free. Let's fund education. Let's fund our parks. Let's like defund the police and reallocate those funds to like, public works like our utilities. Make it so we don't have to worry about getting a power outage every other week. Let's invest in our internet. Make it like super fast like other countries do. Right, so I can like have a higher bandwidth video and like have less lag and shit. I mean that would be very peaceful. How about housing? Maybe we should like guarantee housing for everybody. That would be nice. That to me that's like societal peace when you're talking about. Yeah, I guess some people would say like, oh, you're talking about socialism. Right? But I'm just talking about being kind and compassionate. I mean, I don't know, or like enabling people to achieve peace. That's all I'll say. If you want to call that socialism, okay, fine with me. So that's when I say societal peace. I'm talking more like that, not like martial law type of shit, or like making our police officers look like soldiers from Halo, like Master Chiefs or something, or like Call of Duty, like all decked out and shit with like fucking, uh, you know, automatic assault rifles, all over the place, like they're fucking stormtroopers or something, or yeah. Uh, and Cyborg 2.9 says true peace or a utopia, in my opinion, would have to be anti-capitalist and anti-hustle culture. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Right, anti-capitalist. But I would say like see this is where I kind of like say like, well, maybe some capitalism is good, where it's like, well, I think it's cool to like create things. Like, let's say you're an artist and you want to create stuff, and then you kind of want to like like sell your wares. Now, I guess the argument would be like, well, if you live in an absolutely socialist country, you wouldn't have to sell anything. Everything will just be provided to you, right? Uh, but I think that does provide like a healthy dose of like, um, you know, um, I guess I would say competition. I just because I do know some people, lots of people who need a bit of a push. They're lazy. I do know some people who are like they kind of need that motivation to like push them to like achieve, uh, which they don't have to take. I'm saying like take care of your basic needs, right? But also I'm cool with like adding a little incentive if you want to kind of go above and beyond, like which I would think that's like, well, now you're going into the realm of capitalism. Well, that's not the worst thing in the world, but I guess I would say like, um, basic needs like that should be available without any type of like work involved, right? But now if you're just like talking about like, oh, I want to make like fine jewelry, like I want to make like luxury. You would need to do that without exploiting other people, right? Which is the capitalist way of doing it. But if you want to like say like, I'm making this thing and it's like really difficult to do, like it's not easy. It's gonna take me like 5 years to make this thing, and if you want to like value that thing at a high rate, like I don't see a problem with that as long as you're not exploiting. And so there is kind of this. That's kind of a capitalist way of looking at it, which is not like the worst thing in the world. So I don't know. And then Wild Smile says cyborg truth, anti-capitalism, yeah, anti-colonialism, anti-war, anti-homophobe. Also I was throwing anti-patriarchal, like yeah, like you said, anti-homophobe. Yeah, these are the things that a peaceful society would have. I would say. Uh, cut down on the capitalism, get rid of the colonialism, get rid of that war, get rid of the homophobia. Yeah, yeah, exactly. There's life after death and taxes. And then hello, outrage. Dolphins are not peaceful. I mean, dolphins are just as bad as human beings. Well, I guess no, human beings are worse than dolphins. But I don't. I've seen the National Geographic and the documentaries about dolphins. Dolphins could be pretty fucked up. Like yeah, I've seen what dolphins are, what they can do to other dolphins, and it's pretty horrifying. Now, it's not as bad as what humans do to other human beings. Like we really dominate in terms of like the suffering that we cause to each other. But yeah, dolphins are yeah. So yeah, but that's a good point. Like animals, they hurt each other. They do. Not all animals. Like it's not like the Lion King, the Circle of Life, right? Where all the animals are singing the Circle of Life and they just bow down to to King Simba, right? Like it's the animal kingdom is a very brutal brutal world. It's very, it's not like all brutal. Like there's a lot of peace going on as well. But yeah, you do need to like not get caught up in that myth of like nature being this like kumbaya thing. Right? That's true. Does peace equal calmness? Uh, Probably not, because like after a while you'll get sick of being calm and you want to be excited, right? You would, uh, so you could be excited in a peaceful way, I guess. Right. Wild eyes. I don't know. The fact we can find peace in conflict means it cannot be directly opposed to peace. Right. Like people who do martial arts. Right. Or people who play fighting video games like Street Fighter. Or Tekken. You know, they enjoy that shit. As long as it's consensual, and people are like, "Look, I'm just doing this because I love it, and this is how I find like the true meaning of myself." What is it? Um, I play video games a lot. It's true. In Street Fighter, there's one of the main characters, Ryu, the guy with the kung fu suit. One of the main people in that series. He's like when he one of his quotes when he starts to fight, he says like, I think he says like true meaning. What does he say? Says something. I think he says true meaning lies in the heart of battle. That's what he said before he's about to fight. I don't think it might not be meaning. It might be something else. But I think it's like, or maybe it's just truth. Truth lies in the heart of battle. Rio is like his character Street Fighter, and like his whole thing is like he just wanders the world searching for like challenging fights. Like that's his whole thing because he just feels like fighting is like the way to achieve like his version of peace. Right? That's his whole gimmick. Like his storyline, he's like he just wanders the world looking for like the ultimate fight or the ultimate challenge in like a martial arts. Which is so I mean that's the thing there. I also know people who are into the martial arts and they vibe with that very much. And then Cyborg 2.0, the natural way of existence seems to only be change, and not all change is calm or peaceful. So peace cannot exist in an infinite nor flat way, in my opinion. So there needs to be finity or finitude. I don't know the word for that. So I guess I go back to like the concept of heaven or the afterlife, which is an infinite mode of existence, which is apparently like an infinite state of peace. So how does that work? How is heaven peaceful if it like goes on forever? Are you like constantly challenged? Probably, right? There's like infinite ways to be challenged or like to grow or develop. I don't know. Oh, I skipped. Let's see. Wide eyes. Wide-eyed smiles. I'm reminded of a martial art saying, "What is normal to the spider is chaos to the fly." There you go. Would peace be a manifestation of self-awareness, self-aware lack of anxiety, or maybe contentment? A lack of anxiety and self-awareness. Self-awareness, is that peace? Not yet. Peace is not, because I talk about this a lot in my channel where it's like I feel like we should be striving to create a society where people can self-actualize, meaning like they can become the true beings that they are, right? And to become self-aware, like to really like, oh, this is who I am. This is who I actually am. But that's not the only thing, right? I would say like, because you're not going to be happy even at that moment, right? You're going to be happy, but that's going to be temporary. So what you also have to enable the person to be able to contribute to society, to do good in the world, with that self-awareness, with that actualization, like, oh, this is who I am, and I can use who I am to make the world a better place, right? No, I'm not going to make the world a better place through what you tell me I am, right? I'm not gonna make the world a better place based off of the definition that was assigned to me. No, I'm gonna find who I am truthfully through self-discovery, and then at that point it's like, okay, now I'm best equipped to make the world better by using the truth of who I am, right? And so to me, like that's when it's like now you're getting toward peace at that point. Right. That to me, that's like, okay. Now you're reaching a level of peace, because not only are you like, it's not just about you, which is important. You is important, but now it becomes about like everybody else too, right? So I think that's part of like what it means to be at peace, is like figuring out who you are in relation to everything else, but it's got to be like this, the truth, like there has to be a true examination. It can't be like, you know, understanding who you are and it's like a fake version of yourself. And then looking at the world and it's like this fake version of the world. And so you're kind of like, like working for a corporation or something like that. Like, like a big multi-billion-dollar conglomerate. You're like, well, I got an employee of the month, right? But you're just like, just increasing profit margins for like shareholders at your corporation, at your company, right? So it's hard to find peace when you're just doing that kind of thing. So yeah, I think that's what it has more to do with. And then you say, I feel like the natural puritanism. Wait a minute. Puritanism is too intertwined for us to define between natural peace as opposed to living outside of nature in society. What does that mean? Natural. Oh, I see. Pure it is too. Right, like we're talking about like what the definition of nature. Because lots of people, when you say nature, you think of like the outdoors, but like honestly, the city streets is nature, right? Like concrete jungles are nature, right? That's nature too. It's just like, it's kind of like, because it's societies that we built, but we're not like separate from nature, right? And we use natural resources to build the structures, right? But the problem is like we build these things, these metropolitan, constructs, these mega cities, and then we believe like, oh, we're now apart from nature, right? And that's the problem. And so then we become a part of nature, right? A part, like a part, like not a part, but we separate ourselves from nature, right? But that's an illusion, right? We're still a part of nature. We still are connected with nature. Excuse me. Something going on with my throat. I might have to get some water. But I think I'm cool now. Yeah, we're still part of nature, which is you as with like disasters when Miami is this is a major city, but when the hurricane comes, it's still like nature is still affecting it because everything's interconnected, right? So when we say nature, like I think it is important to understand like we're not a part of nature, even though we like to pretend or like to think that we are. Even though we live in these cities and we deal with these skyscrapers and all this stuff, but we're still like nature is still like a part of us, or we're still in it. Right. So when we talk about peace, like you can totally obtain peace within these like constructs that we've developed, like these mega cities. Because we're still in nature. But the problem is like why we're apart from nature or why we're separate from nature is not that we're living not in the outdoors. we're separate from nature because we think we believe that we're separate from nature. That's what makes us separate from nature. But if we exist in these cities and we acknowledge, like, no, actually, what's going on in the Amazon rainforest is affecting us in like Memphis, Tennessee, right? Right, it's all interconnected. Then you're still with a part of nature, right? Which is how you're still able to obtain a version of peace even in the big city. Uh, uh, let's see here. Like how Zizek says people fetishize nature as pure. Yeah, no, people will do that. Like the Lion King. This is a perfect example of that. And then Jeremy Borno, it would feel good to dance wildly without people watching and judging. Well, a lot of the parties I go to, like these goth nights, nobody's judging anybody. They're just letting people. So I do go to there. It's kind of nice to go to communities and events where people really aren't judging. Like certain, I'm sure they're bad goth parties and they're bad raves where people do judge. But I used to go to raves where like that there was like it was a judge free zone, right? People could dance any way they wanted, and nobody gave a damn, right? So yeah, I don't know. Maybe you should look for something like that in your neck of the woods, your part of the world. Wild, wild-eyed smiles. Can we define peace as peace when we still have the prison state? Nope, we cannot. It's forced via violence, and how can we call it peace? We can't. That's why I think we intuitively know the state is opposed to free peace. Yep, the state is absolutely opposed to free peace, and like the prison industrial complex is like it's a horrible thing. And I consider myself an abolitionist. I think we should abolish prisons. They serve no good except they destroy. They don't offer any form of justice. That's for damn sure. They're just like constructs for people for free labor or like virtually free labor. Um, yeah, they I mean, I could go on and on about that. I mean, I've made videos about that, so I'm definitely agree with you there. Jeremy Borno says there is so many societal ills that people refuse to rectify, and that's why some people are living peacefully as recluses. And it's true. It's not just they're not living peacefully as recluses. They're also like living blissfully. So I work for FedEx. So Memphis is the Tennessee is the city where FedEx is headquartered. So they got their big um, their big headquarters in Memphis, Tennessee. Right. I work at that building. And disclaimer: like the views and opinions of me do not reflect the views and opinions of FedEx Express or I'm just like a guy that works for the company. I don't, my ideas don't reflect FedEx or anything like that. But I work for FedEx. I've worked for that company for like many, many, many years. Right? Pays good. They're not really complaining, but I'm just saying like there's a lot of people that work there that they are in like the ills of the world are just not a part of their reality. Like prison industrial complex, they are not even thinking about that. They recently had the PGA tour because the FedEx building also has a golf course, and like so they have like golf championships over there, and you can go there and get tickets for cheap as an employee. I'm not a golf guy, so I don't. But I mean, you see all these employees just watching the golf and appreciating the golf games, and I'm like, wow, you guys are just in la la land. Like climate change, they don't give a shit about. Like, in um, where I'm from, the South, Memphis, we're dealing with like a lot of like anti-LGBTQ laws that are being passed in our legislature. uh, our state legislation, and it's like y'all don't. It's not. It's crazy because it's not like the people I work with are like um, blatantly homophobic or like hateful toward. It's just not. They don't even think about it. It's like don't you care that this is like they're just not even. It's not even in their purview, right? Which is a kind of homophobia, I would argue, or is a kind of like discrimination when you kind of just allow it to happen. Uh, so but then you have to argue like, are they living in peace? Are they at peace? Or like, I would say like, I would actually argue they're not in a state of peace. Like they're in a state of blissful ignorance, which is not peace. Right? I'm not saying like all FedEx employees. I'm just saying some of them. And it's not just FedEx employees. It's like other attendees of the PGA Tour. Uh, I'm not like a guy that makes generalizations. I don't like generalizations. Uh, but it is true, like the blissful ignorance, because eventually like that catches up to you. It does. Like you can't live in blissful ignorance forever. It bites you in the ass. I've seen it. I'm sure maybe you've seen it too, where it's like you think everything's hunky dory, then all of a sudden you turn around, it's like, what the fuck is happening? Whether it's like a natural quote unquote disaster happens and you're like, oh shit, I don't have power. Like I, it's like my AC unit went out and it's like 100 degrees outside. What? How did this happen? Or like oh shit, like um, we got a fascist is like the governor, or like the mayor. Like what the hell happened? Uh, so it's kind of like a temporary, like I don't see blissful ignorance as peace because it doesn't last, right? It doesn't last. And then I've sold stuff without capitalism. It's wild-eyed smiles. That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, that's cool that you sold something without capitalism. Um, I guess I'm all for like I'm cool with competition, um, and if it has to come with like competition of products, because competition does drive people to like, and if it's like people who are making things to make society better, and you need incentives for that to happen, I guess you could like, that's where I'm like, well, I guess capitalism can, a very limited version of capitalism could play a part into that. Uh, but yeah, you definitely could sell. I mean, people sold stuff before the existence of capitalism, right? Right. Or what they call it, mercantilism, right? Even before that, right? Not selling anyone's mode of production when I make it all myself and don't shortcut nobody. Um, yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean it gets complicated. I guess this is kind of like um, because I don't want to get like too side because we could start talking about this and it could be like another 2 hours, or it's like let's say like but I'll throw out a scenario. Like, let's say you got an idea for something, right? I want to achieve this thing, right? You have a vision, but you don't know how to. But you have people who can help you achieve the vision. Like, I have this idea to make this like sculpture, right? I have the idea, but you don't know how to sculpt, right? But you know people who are like, oh, but I know this person here. They're very good at sculpting, so I'm gonna like hire. I'm gonna like work with them, And if that's like hiring them, so like you're using their mode of production to achieve your vision, because they might be like, yeah, man, I'll help you build. What do you want to build? I'll help you do it. Like, but you gotta give me a little something, something, because I need, it'll be nice if you gave me something, right? And if it was like a fair exchange, that's cool. Right. But I guess like the argument is like, well, that's not capitalism because it's a fair exchange. Capitalism is when you exploit, But is it though? I don't know. Can you make it a capitalism that's a fair exchange where you're not exploiting, where it's like, um, you're a guy that like owns a lot of like machines, but you don't know how to use them. And you're like, I don't know how to use these, but I got them. So like, here, you can use these machines to help me build the thing that I want to build, right? Uh, and I'm gonna pay. I'm gonna make sure you're well compensated for what you're doing. Your time is well compensated and such. And then they do it. They're like, okay, cool, I made it for you. Thank you. That was fun. I'm glad. I made because and then we could just keep going on and on. But so I don't know. I think it could be that kind of uh, like transaction can be fair, um, but currently, like we live in, the whole capitalism model as it is currently, like yeah, it's definitely not fair, right? Which is not conducive to peace, right? So that's true. In an outrage says, do you think if we came into a perfect utopian socialist whatever society, do you think we would still find something to be upset about? Uh-huh. In other words, do we need something to struggle toward? Um, yeah, I think so. I think so. I think like if you have nothing to work toward, like then you gotta like start getting bored fast. uh, and then Wide Eye says we can always struggle to be better than we were yesterday. Peacefully would mean intolerant or intolerance and hierarchy. Mm-mm. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's interesting when you look now. When you when you look at the story of Satan or Lucifer. What I think that's called Paradise Lost. One day I'm gonna make a video about that. That book, that text, that epic poem, Paradise Lost. I know, most people, lots of people will be like, well, that's a made up story, so it doesn't really. But I think it's a good, like, if you just think about it theologically, because you're in heaven, and Satan is like Satan, Lucifer. That angel has everything. Has all of God's. But what Satan doesn't have, is like a mode where everything revolves around Satan, right? Revolves around him. That's what it's an ego thing. It's an ego thing. So you live in a society where you have everything except you don't have it inflated. Like, your ego. You're not the center of attention, right? And it's fascinating to think like that. It's like I can imagine that, like, if people lived in a utopian society where they had everything, there would still be people who would be like, yeah, but I want to be the center of I want to be the center of attention, right? There would still be like this kind of like greed or selfishness that some people would overtake them, right? So in that case, and so like the argument would be like, because it's interesting when there's this argument. It's like all you need to do is provide people with the perfect conditions, and if you provide somebody with the perfect conditions, they'll be perfect. Like, as opposed to the other argument where it's like, well, no, human beings just they're naturally susceptible to certain corruptibilities, right? Like they're vulnerable to like the greed and like selfishness, and that's just innate in us. And it doesn't matter the conditions. Like you can make conditions that are like that allow those corruptibilities not to be so invasive, right? Like if you make a world like that where people have equal access to like the things that they need and such, like so then the greed and the natural propensity toward greed and like selfishness would be drastically diminished, but it'll still be there, right? So I think about that sometimes when it's like, well, how do we create a perfect society? And of course, like you want to create like conditions that like where people are able to like, um, you know, be equitable and share, because we don't live in that currently. But I still think like, but it's so that's kind of like how I feel sometimes about, you know, certain like people who are really into utopian visions, where it's kind of like they feel like all we gotta do is create the perfect conditions. It is like, well, there's more to it than that, even, right? You have to like always keep in mind like there's this gnawing like susceptibility that humans have toward being greedy and being like selfish, and that you have to always constantly fight against that, no matter the conditions, right? But yeah, that's an interesting way of thinking. Like what you're saying with peacefully would mean intolerance and hierarchy. See, the issue is like there's some people who just want to have hierarchy. It's all like you would have to like be, because I'm part of this I'm part of this activist organization called Food Not Bombs. They're an anarchist group. Anarchy is like it's opposed to hierarchies. So we don't have a hierarchy. There's nobody in charge, right? There's nobody has more power than anybody else. But some people will join and they'll join and be like, "What? I don't understand this." It's like, what's going on? Like, I don't like this. Like, there needs to be like there needs to be leaders. There needs to be people in charge. And we tell them like, that's not how we roll. And some people like they decide to leave. They literally decide to. They're like, I can't take this. This is a horrible way of organization. Yeah, which is fascinating to me. It's like some people say, like, well, they're brainwashed and they've been so conditioned to accept like hierarchies, like they can't handle when that doesn't exist. So there's part of that. And I also think like with some of these people that quit, I'm like, y'all, you just wanted power, right? You just wanted control, right? Because all people have this innate like obsession with power and control. It's just some people have certain degrees of it more than others, and and some people are able to like they've examined their dark side and they're like, okay, I know I recognize this in me and I need to keep it in check, right? But some people are like, nah, I embrace that, and they just want the hierarchy, right? So that's the other thing. So it's interesting to think about these things, because it's like, well, just because you abolish hierarchy doesn't mean it's gonna like it's gone forever. So there are gonna be people who are gonna try to reinstate it, because there's some people who just are obsessed with power, right? So there needs to be like there's your conflict right there. So I think like a utopian society will never really be like, there's always gonna be this fight, this conflict to maintain the utopian society, right? Because there's always gonna be some people who are like, I don't like this. Like I want a power structure. Like I want some control. I want like my ego to be appeased, right? And there's got to be some people that be like, no, we don't roll like that, and that's gonna be a conflict. So a utopian society will always have. There'll always be a conflict to maintain that utopian society. I think so. I think so. And then red eyes. Let's see. Red eyes really. Peace is lost as soon as you become self aware of your peaceful state. It is quickly replaced with selfish desire to cling to each peaceful moment. Does knowing peace mean someone can never be truly peaceful? It's kind of like the story of Adam and Eve, right? Garden of Eden, where they, you know, uh, they ate from the tree of the fruit, from the tree of like knowledge, of knowledge of good and evil, and with that knowledge, then that was it. That was like they were in this blissful state apparently, as the story goes. Then they ate the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and then when then they were aware of like, oh, right, like what you're saying. They were aware of their peaceful state, and then selfishness came. It's that whole concept, right? Uh, does knowing peace means someone can never be truly peaceful? I don't think that's the case. I think really it just comes down to like, if you want to be peaceful, you want to live in a peaceful society or a peaceful state, you have to like be able to give up your desire for power. Right? Really, you gotta be like, you gotta keep your selfishness and your motivation for greed in check, right? And I think that's a self awareness that has to happen, where it's like, okay, I'm in this state of peace, but I know like I can get in a situation where I'm gonna want to have certain powers, or I want to have certain controls that are gonna be exploitative, and they're gonna like be harmful to other people, and I gotta keep that check. So it's really like the keeping in check, right? Or like the constant maintenance of like, okay, guys, let's not go there, right? We want to keep this peace, right? So let's not try to exploit people, right? I think it's more of an awareness of one's dark side, rather than just like the awareness. Yeah, so I think it's good to have an awareness of dark side, right? You need that to maintain peace. All right. Oh boy, I scrolled down and like all these comments went up. Let's see. And in Wide Eyes, capitalism externalizes actualization, so it leaves people's endeavors hollow because they don't instigate reflective actualization. Yeah, now that's that Marxist, that Marxism, where it's like, yeah, capitalism dehumanizes people because it people, their self awareness is like reduced to their labor, and their labor becomes their like their self awareness. Like, they no longer are like working toward like their self actualization. They're working toward the actualization of just capital, right? uh, so that's the problem. But again, I just think like, if you're aware of the system, it's like, okay, like what the example I was talking about, how like, okay, there's this guy that he owns a bunch of like, he owns like a workshop where there's all types of tools that people can use to sculpt things, but he owns the like, he has these tools, but he doesn't know how to use them, right? So he's like, okay, I'm gonna let these people who know how to use them, I'm gonna allow them to use them, right? But they're still my tools, right? And I'm gonna manage the tools, right? They're just gonna, and then like maybe they have a vision, and maybe he has a vision, and so like I think that could work. It's just like he needs to be aware, like, okay, at any moment I could become susceptible to the temptation to exploit. So I gotta make sure that I'm not exploiting the people that are working for me. I gotta pay them fairly. I gotta make sure that they're they have access to the tools for their own projects. It's all this other thing, or maybe even like eventually allow them to the resources necessary. If they want the tools, they can have it, right? Because some people don't want to have ownership toward the tools. They just want to do the work, right? It's kind of like people I know who are like they never want to buy a house. There's some people I know that are like that. Like I like renting. Like they tell me like I never want to own a house because if I rent, then if we have like plumbing issues or like roofing issues, I can just call my landlord and they take care of that. Like they don't want that responsibility. They're cool. Like I know people who are like that. Like I will never buy a house, right? Which is that's interesting to me because I don't share that opinion. But I get it. I get it. So I think that relationship could work if the landlord wasn't so damn exploitative. It's like, okay, I will take care of the maintenance of this house, right? But I'm not going to charge you exorbitant amounts for mortgage rates or for a rent, right? Right. You just have to be more fair about it, but So I guess my thing is like I think you can make capitalism, um, like more equitable, but I know like that's hearsay with socialist people. Now I'm not a cheerleader for capitalism, absolutely not. Like our current state of capitalism is horrible, right? Late stage capitalism, right? Um, but I think all systems are susceptible to problems. Um, yeah. Let's see here. I was just about to say, blissful ignorance does not equal peace. Actually, yep. There's no longevity in it. And then Wide Eye Smile says gift economy. Yeah, like uh, I'm on a Facebook group. It's like it's called Buy Nothing. Like people just put stuff on the Facebook for free. It's like, hey, I got this free thing. You can take it if you want. Or like, I've given away coffee machines. I've also gotten some free stuff. So that's cool. Competition plus motivation in a capitalist context, though, is not healthy or peaceful because the only reason for it is to generate profit and is exploitation based. Right, but what if it's not? What if you you don't it doesn't have to like you can change it up. But I guess what you're saying is like, well, if you change it up, then it's no longer capitalism. But I'm saying like like my example that I keep bringing up, like, what if, yeah, I mean, they're just people. I just know people who are like, they're not idea people, but they like doing crafts. Like, I know artists who just do contract work, and they tell me, like, I just don't have ideas of my own. I just like drawing for other people, right? So what if you're like a person that's like, and then I asked them like, because I do know these people are. It's kind of hard to believe like an artist, like they have their own ideas, but I know plenty of artists who say like, I have no ideas on my own. I just like to draw, right? And and I asked them like, why don't you just make your own stuff? It's like I don't like doing that. I don't want to do it, right? It's the same thing with people who I know writers. They're the same thing. Like they just write for clients. And I'm like, man, you write so much. Why don't you write your own book? They're like, I don't want to do that. I don't write my own book. It's like, okay. So for those people, it's like, I think you could offer like a person who's like, hey, look, man, I got the printing. I'm the publisher. I got the resources, or like, I need this thing written up. Can you help me write it up? Or like, look, I have this idea for this story. Can you draw it for me? Right. I can even give you the paper, and I can give you like the art supplies you need and all that. Just and that could be a fair exchange. It doesn't have to be exploitative, I would say. And they're exchanging their means of production. for like to make this concept, right? But it could be equitable. I think it doesn't have to be exploitative, but you know. But yeah, I agree. Like, capitalism as it is today is exploitative and it's horrible. It's true. Uh, Jeremy Borno says you should make the world better, but not at the expense of health and well-being. Yep, true. And then Wide Eye Smile says, I'm a blacksmith. I turn stuff from the waste stream into usable, long-lasting tools. Cool. Capitalism is inherently exploitative. Uh, yeah, right. That's the Marxist theory, and I'm just not convinced that it has to be inherently exploitative. I'm just not convinced. I think it is. I mean, it currently is. Um, but at the same time, I'm not gonna like argue with you. Like capitalism is exploitative. Absolutely, it is. Like, yes. Yeah. I just feel like socialism. You can have exploitative. Um, you can have exploitative societal relationships within socialism too. As crazy as this, because we've seen socialists, and that's not the poo poo on socialism. I like a lot of socialists. Yeah, it just depends. And then some people will argue. They'll say like, well, no, what it is capitalist interests are coming into these socialist countries. But I don't know, man. I grew up, in the early '90s, and I would see, people. I'd have immigrants from USSR would come at my elementary school, and they would just tell me like, yeah, it sucked living there, man. Now, I mean, the USSR, which was a socialist country at the time, but they would like go invade or annex is what they call countries and be like, okay, you're part of us now, right? And then they would, because I there were kids that I grew up with who immigrated, who like were refugees, and the USSR would like just overtake their country, and they'd be like, okay, you're a socialist country now, even though the socialist country would be like, even though the country would be like, I don't want to be part of the USSR, but the USSR would be like, it doesn't matter, you're part of us now. It's like that's an exploitative relationship, right? Right. You should allow them to be what the hell they ever want, But so, but I'm not trying to attack socialism. What I'm saying is, within any within any framework, you can have exploitative relationships, right? And it's true, like certain frameworks are more susceptible to exploitation than others. Like it is true, like capitalism is more susceptible to exploitation than socialism is, but you can still have exploitative relationships in socialism. And I think you can is capitalism inherently exploitative? I don't know. I just think like the examples that I threw out there just kind of like demonstrate it doesn't have to be. But I don't know. Later, when you mention contentment, it's about being satisfied and grateful for things. This is Jeremy Borno. A simple life revolves around appreciating resources. Okay, okay. Yeah, being grateful and appreciative for the resources that you have. But I do think like sometimes you got to like you got to like strive to have more resources, not in an exploitative way, right? But I think sometimes contentment can be taken too far, where it's like, you know, when, for example, like an Uncle Tom situation, where Uncle Tom is like, oh, I appreciate my master for what he's done for me. And it's like, well, no, I mean, like a slave should not be content, right? Right? There should be no contentment with slavery, right? That kind of relationship, there's no room for contentment, right? It's abusive relationships, like So I think sometimes, and even like when you have enough resources, it's like, okay, let's try and get some more. Let's try and get some more, but not in an exploitative way. Right? So I think like the striving to get more, but in an equitable, like, a sustainable way, um, you know, is a path to peace, and it's that, but that's not contentment, right? Because you're like not like just okay with being where you're at. Like you want to go further. Right. I don't know. Does a utopia equal perfection? Well, I guess I would argue no, right? Because, well, I mean, I don't know. But I think like a utopia is, part of a utopia is like a striving always to improve, which is like, I think maybe a never ending pursuit, right? So that there will be no perfection at that point because you're always perfecting or like you're trying to get better. I don't know. And then Jeremy Boyle, tell me, Neil, can difficult people who rebel against the capitalistic system be successful? Uh, can difficult people, I don't know, or just people who are just like don't accept. Uh, yeah, they can be successful. Like I rebel against the capitalist system, even though I'm like saying like it doesn't have to be all bad. But like what I'm doing with like when I say like I'm on the Facebook page and I'm on the group No Buy Nothing, that's kind of like a revolt against the capitalist system where I just give free stuff, or like part of my activist work where I feed I just give people Food Not Bombs is the group I'm a part of, and we give people free food. And how we get the free food is that a lot of groceries and restaurants and eateries, they just throw food away that's good that they just can't sell for several reasons. 40% of all food that's produced just gets thrown out, right? It just like wasted for no reason. So we gather a lot of that, right? And then we just um, give it to free people. Now, the last live stream I did, I talked about how we got like harassed by law enforcement. They said we needed a permit, which is a capitalistic like thing. Like basically, they're saying like you need to like sell this food. Like essentially, was what they were saying. You need to sell this. Like this is not acceptable. This like this non-capitalist. But we fought against it, and that we're still like out in this park giving out free food. And we're just giving out free food, which is kind of like a more of a socialist thing. Um, so I think that's successful. You know, and we're gonna continue to fight. They still are like saying we need a permit, and we're like, no, we don't. So we're just continuing to go out there. And we'll see what happens. So I think you can success. You can do that. Okay, looks like Wide Eye Smiles has to go. Love to chat. Was fantastic way to close out my shift cleaning the kitchen. Hope to catch y'all next time. Peace out. I fail to understand how the system improves the world when there are endless facts to contradict it. Well, you should read some Hegel, or at least look at my videos, because Hegel has lots of the continental philosopher Hegel, right? He has this whole concept around contradiction, or he says like contradiction it's a very complicated thing, but essentially it's contradiction actually is progressive, like and contradiction is actually how the world actually works. Like opposing forces is how like existence moves forward. Like um, existence happens through contradiction. It's like a cycle in which he kind of calls a dialectic. Um, So he would say, so it's kind of like this whole idea of like, yeah, you do need to struggle. You need a contradictory force coming at you so that you can kind of like interact with to like then move forward. right? And like kind of like make you better. So he would say like contradiction is good. I mean, that's the way toward peace is through contradiction. But I would encourage you to check out my videos on Hegel, or just pick up some of his works yourself, and to know more about that. And Cyborg 2.0 says, "What would peace in a egoless or keeping your ego in check, as you said, world across different geographical landscapes and cultures look like? I wonder." Yeah, I wonder. Because that's definitely not the world we live in today. But I think it would look like a nice world, right? It'll look like a world where people care about each other more than themselves, right? Or like at least equally. Like people would care. I would say like people would care about each other just as much as they do other people, right? They wouldn't put themselves before anybody else, but they wouldn't put themselves under anybody else too. We would all be on the same. That would be a nice world. And a red eyes really says, forget about knowledge and wisdom, and people will be 100 times better off. Throw away chatty and righteousness. Oh, charity and righteousness, and people will return to brotherly love. Tao Te Ching. Okay. What do you think of this? Oh, let me think. Well, I will focus on. I mean, forget about knowledge and wisdom? I guess like maybe like I take that as more like don't put knowledge and wisdom like as the end all be all, or like as like the most important thing. Rather, it's more about like, well, how are you applying the knowledge and wisdom, right? Which that's the thing, right? Like people want to know everything, but it's like, yeah, but what are you doing with all that knowledge and wisdom, right? I mean, that's the more important part, right? And then charity and righteousness, yes, like forget about what does it say? Throw away charity, right? Because so in the social activist world, there's a difference between charity and like mutual aid, right? So charity is like it's about righteousness. It's just about being more righteous. It's like, oh, I'm giving you this because I want to like prop my ego, like egoless. Yeah, that's kind of like the state of charity is today. It's like an ego thing. Right? I'm giving you something to make me feel better about myself. Right? As mutual aid is like, well, I'm giving you this because not only does it help you, but it helps me. We're helping each other out by me giving you this. You're actually giving me something because I give you this thing, right? Uh, and so that's more important, right? So I would agree. I would agree. Uh, Cyborg 2.0. May I ask why you don't think capitalism isn't inherently exploitative? Not trying to argue and debate. I'm just generally interested in hearing your opinion. Huh? Like I was saying with my example. Uh, yeah, like like I was saying, like my example. Like, so I personally know people who don't have ideas. Really, like they're creative people, like they're good artists. They know how to draw really well. Now, I also know artists who have their own ideas and have their own like concepts, and they want to like bring them to fruition. That's cool. But I also know people who are like, I just know how to draw very well, or I just know I really know how to write good. Like they're very good writers, but they don't have their own stories, right? They don't have their own like plots, or like they don't have their own concepts, but they do very much enjoy working for other people. It's like they're like contract workers basically, and that makes them very happy, right? And so like but then there are other people, right, who are like they got their ideas, like, oh, I have an idea for like a cool story, or I have an idea for uh, you know, uh, just some concept or whatever. but they don't know how to draw, or they don't know how to, they're not good writers. Right? But and so not only do they not know how to do it, but they have all these materials. They have all these like means of protect. They have the capital, right? They have like fancy paper. They got color, like the really expensive markers and coloring, or they got like a quiet space that they can provide the person. And they're like, and so what if they work together? They're like, look, I got this idea for this story, but I would like for you to like work for me. Like you can, if you, I'll tell you what I want you to draw. Can you draw it for me? And they're like, sure, that's what I want to do. I want to draw. I love drawing, right? Or like I love writing. Like tell me like your idea. I'll write something out for you, right? And they'll be like, cool. Like I even can offer you a quiet space for you to work. I got like expensive paper that you can draw on. I got like scanners, and I got like a digital monitor, and I'll even pay you well, or like whatever. I'll compensate you very well. And it's like cool. Um, if they're getting paid well, right? And I just don't see that as inherently exploitative, right? I mean, it's different if you're not getting like if you're not making a good amount of money, right? Or like I said with the thing before about the people that I know who don't want to ever buy a home. They're like, I don't want to buy a house. I like renting, right? They like rent, and they don't want to deal with like property management, right? It's like I think it could work out where it's like a landlord is like, okay, I'll like every time the plumbing is broken, or like the roof needs to be redone, or you need to have the floor redone, or so I'll take care of that. But the problem is we live in a world where these landlords they charge these insane prices for rent. It's like, well, just don't charge that much. Charge a fair price, right? Don't charge like 50% of your income. Charge like 20% or even less, right? Right. Then it becomes like fair, right? Then it's not inherently exploitative, right? So I'm saying like you can make it work. Like you can make it not inherently exploitative. It's just we just live in a world where exploitation is just this thing that's expected, and and so we assume like even capitalism is like, oh, capitalism is just exploitative just because it is. It's like it doesn't have to be, right? If you kind of like use your imagination and like be like, we can make this kind of like not exploitative. Well, how so? Well, just think about it, right? That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. And then you say Food.Bob says great work. Yeah, that's a great organization. See you next time, Neil. Okay, gotta go, Jeremy. Bye bye. Uh, have a good evening. And yes, big difference between charity and mutual aid. I don't really understand actualization of self. Could you explain it more, Neil, please? Yes. From my understanding of self-actualization comes from Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You may have heard that. It's basically like, once you get your basic needs met, you got your food, your shelter, your water, and then you start getting into loving relationship. You find people who love you, and you can love them, and you got like all that met, and you basically got your basic necessities and needs met. Then it's like, okay, then you discover like, okay, who am I? Like, who am I as an individual, right? Like, who am I, right? And so, and we live in a society where like that's not a thing. Like people don't have to. Like people don't. Okay, bye bye, cyborg. Everybody's going because we're like 2 hours in. I guess this will be the last comment, but I'll explain. Emol Plut. Nice shit. Yep. See you later, Cyborg 2.0. Yeah, so yeah, we currently live in a society where that is people aren't like free to discover who they are. Why? Because we live in a society of patriarchy where you know women are supposed to do this, 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 and this, and men are supposed to be, women are subordinate, and they are the support system, and they're like meek, and that's what's supposed to be, and this is how it is today, right? And men are supposed to be dominant and violent, and that's what it means to be a man, right? And so all anything outside of that, like queerness, LGBTQ plus stuff, was like that's just like erased. It's like, or it's like transgender identity is like, oh, that's not a real thing, right? Like we live in a society, the state I live in, the books are banned that have those topics, even though they exist. Like there's people who exist in these modes of existence, right? But we pretend like they don't exist, right? And same thing with like race and other like modes of being, right? And like histories and such. People are not allowed to discover like who they are, right? People are just we're conditioned to just conform. Like society tells us who we are, right? Even though like that's not who we are. Like people will say like men are supposed to be violent and dominant. So if you're a man and you're not violent, it's because there's lots of men who aren't by nature. They're submissive or whatever, which is not necessarily a bad thing, right? But then you're submissive, then society say, oh, you're not a man. You're just like a little punk. You're a little pussy. What are you, gay or something? Like there's all these like alienating, ostracizing, othering that takes place that makes you conform, right? So you're not allowed to like really find out who you truly are, right? And so like self-actualization is the ability to like really figure out, okay, who am I? Like, oh, okay, maybe even though I biologically have these aspects about me that are male, but maybe I identify as a woman, right? That's a self-actualization, right? And so and all types of other things. Like I call myself the Black Ponder because I acknowledge like the history of blackness in the United States of America, and that affects me, and I identify as such. Like that's a real thing that like affects my identity. So I'm self-actualizing, and by doing this, it helps us contribute further to society because now we're like, oh, okay, now I truly understand my place in the world. So with that, I can use that knowledge to help other people. Right. And this is like actualization. So, and then you say, so is who we are something imagined? Let me see. Let me copy paste. My wife is walking in the door. I think. Hello. Space. Format it. So is who we are something imagined? No, it's a real thing. Let me see. Yeah, it's a real thing. Like take for example. Let's take for example like the Black Ponder, blackness. It is a social construct, right? It's a social construction. So it is like created. But there are these real effects, these actual real effects that happen that influence like our identities. Like so like there are real consequences for being black in the United States of America that develop experiences that I had to deal with that have shaped my identity. So that's real, even though like the construct is created, right? It is an imagination, but the imagined construct creates real things, like actual real consequences, real conditions that affect people's identity. Same thing with like queerness, for example. They aren't imagined. They affect you in real ways, right? And so once you like begin to understand like how these things actually affect you and how they shape your identity, that enables you to like it further like empowers you to contribute to society, right? To contribute like to make the world better because now you know who you really are, right? So that's actualization, right? That's self actualization. Okay, so yeah, we've been over 2 hours. This is definitely one of the longest, if not the longest, live stream we've done so far, which is cool. And hey, what it was a live stream recommended by a viewer, so that tells me something. Like I should make special attention to topics recommended by viewers. But with that said, if nobody has any other comments, I think I will close. I think a lot of people left already. So thank you for joining me, and anybody who watches later with the recording, feel free to comment. All good. But yeah, thanks for watching. See you later, all the people. Emon Plut. Sorry, I keep mispronouncing your name, but I'm doing my best. But yeah, you've been watching the Black Ponder. Tune in next time for more philosophical thought. Bye bye.